Rocks are divided up into three categories based on how they are formed. We have igneous rocks, sedimentary rocks, and metamorphic rocks. Today we'll look at that first type of rock, igneous rocks. And for today's lesson, you'll need the page of notes that says igneous rocks, and you'll also need the bag from your rock samples that says igneous rocks. And you'll look at those rock samples and as I'll talk about each one of them. Notice that your rock samples have numbers on them, so those numbers will match the ones that are in this video and in your notes. So first of all, let's figure out what igneous rocks are. I'll give you a hint. That word igneous comes from a Latin word ignis, and that word means fire. In fact, in the English language, our word ignite comes from that word too. So that gives us a hint to how these rocks are formed. Igneous rocks started as magma or lava. And let's take a moment to make sure we know the difference between those two words. Magma and lava are both melted rock that is so hot that instead of being a solid, it's actually a liquid. The difference between the two of them is where they are located. Magma is melted rock that is under the ground. So looking at our volcano here, all of these sections are considered magma, where the rock is melted, but it's underneath the Earth's surface. Once that magma escapes out into the actual ground and the surface, then we call it lava. So lava is magma that has reached the Earth's surface. So looking at our volcano, we would label this top part up here. Any of the melted rock that has reached the Earth's surface, whether it's come out of the top of the volcano or it's leaking down the side, that would be considered lava. So that's what igneous rocks start as, magma or lava. But then after we get that magma or lava has to cool and harden. So the magma or lava cools and hardens into new rock, and that's how we get our igneous rock. You can see in this picture, this is from 2014. This is an eruption of the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii. And here's what it looks like in October 25th. And then a couple days later, you can see on November 4th that it has cooled and hardened. And so that same location that had lava now has new cooled and hardened rock. Now, when we look at igneous rock, since it can be formed from magma or lava, that means we divide igneous rock into two different types. If it's formed from lava above the ground, we call it extrusive. And if it's formed from magma underneath the Earth's surface, we call it intrusive. We're going to take a look at extrusive rocks first. So extrusive igneous rocks are made from hardened lava. And that means they come out of a volcano, or they could also come out of one of those vents, like a trench or a mid-ocean ridge, and then they cool above the ground. So as you can see in this video, we have our lava that is cooling and hardening and turning into our extrusive igneous rock. So let's take a look at each of those types of extrusive igneous rock. The first one is called obsidian, O-B-S-I-D-I-A-N, and it's also sometimes called volcanic glass. As you can see, looking at your rock sample number 1, it is usually black in color. Sometimes it can be brown, but it's very glassy. And that happens because of how it's formed. In this video, a geologist took some actual melted rock, and they made their own lava, and dumped it into a bathtub with cold water in it. And as that hot rock hits the cold water, it cools very, very quickly. And because it cools so quickly, it doesn't have time to form any crystals. It just cools into glass, volcanic glass. So that's why obsidian looks so smooth and glassy. If you play Minecraft, you have probably heard of obsidian before, and sometimes in Minecraft it is used as a weapon, but real obsidian glass is very sharp. So you might think it's a good weapon, but it's like glass. And so unfortunately it is very brittle, and actually little pieces of it break off pretty easily. Sometimes the obsidian will have little white spots in it. So there's an example of that down here. This is called snowflake obsidian because it has little white spots that look like snowflakes. And that happens when the mineral quartz explodes into these little patterns of crystals as the obsidian cools. We're going to go ahead and skip over rock sample number 2. You have 2 rock samples number 2, but those are intrusive, so we'll get to those at the bottom of the page. Let's take a look at rock sample number 3. This rock is called basalt, B-A-S-A-L-T, basalt. And it's a very dark colored rock. Depending on the sample you have, you most likely have a dark gray one, or it might have some brown in it as well. And basalt is formed on the ocean floor. This video shows a submarine that is actually capturing some volcanic activity that's on the ocean floor. So along a mid-ocean ridge, there's lava that's seeping out and it's cooling very quickly. And if you look down here, you can kind of see this is the basalt that is being formed. So most of the volcanic activity that happens on Earth actually happens under the ocean. So a lot of it we don't see. About 80% of eruptions and seeping lava are happening on the ocean floor. And as that happens, it forms basalt. And so that means that basalt is the most common igneous rock, since almost the entire ocean floor has this as its basis, and we have more ocean than we do land on Earth. Basalt is the most common rock. Igneous rock. Rock sample number 4 is called scoria, S-C-O-R-I-A. Depending on the sample you have, you might see that it is black or dark gray, or it might be red or have some brown in it as well. And scoria, if you look carefully at it, has these little tiny holes all throughout it. That happens because the lava itself wasn't just lava as it was cooled. It had gases that were trapped inside of it. So as the volcano erupted, there were gases coming out right along with the lava. And so as the lava began to cool, those little tiny gases escaped out, and that left behind little holes, little bubbles in it. So you can see that in this video that we have our frothing lava. So that's where the little holes come from. Rock sample number 5 is called rhyolite, R-H-Y-O-L-I-T. And rhyolite is a lava rock that is lighter in color, and that's because it actually has more quartz in it. So that particular mineral quartz is a light color. Rhyolite has more of that than the other types of igneous rocks, so it's very light in color. And it could be kind of a sandish, tan color. It might be reddish as well, but it's lighter than all the other rocks. I didn't find a video of rhyolite lava forming, but this is an excellent picture from Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming of a canyon that's formed by rhyolite lava. So the rhyolite lava flowed down and hardened to form this canyon. The last extrusive igneous rock we'll look at is rock sample number 16. It's number 16 because it didn't originally come in your rock sample kit. I had to buy it separately, so it had to have a separate number. So rock number 16 is called pumice, P-U-M-I-C-E, pumice. And you'll feel that it feels very, very rough. Like scoria, it also is full of little tiny bubbles. And that is because, just like scoria, there were gases that were trapped inside that lava. Pumice can usually be anywhere from a light color to a dark gray, but it is formed from lava that is literally foaming. It is so full of gases that the whole thing is just frothing and foaming. In this video, you can actually see a raft of pumice in the Pacific Ocean, and there's a pretty cool story behind this. The video that I showed you before of basalt forming, that was coming from lava seeping out of a mid-ocean ridge underneath the water. And a lot of times volcanologists don't catch those. They don't see it happening. They don't get video footage of something happening on the ocean floor because it's hard to spot. However, our geologists had a big clue that an eruption was forming because on the surface there was all this pumice. So what I showed you before, the video of basalt, they knew that there was volcanic eruption happening underneath the ocean, and they were able to get a submarine down there and get video footage because they had a clue on the surface of the water. And that was that there was all this pumice that was floating on top of the ocean. So these pictures came from a boat that was out there and discovered all of this pumice. And you can see that, as I said, the rock actually floats. And so that's how they were able to find it. And if you want to try it, you actually can put your pumice in water if you'd like, and it will float or get pretty close to the top. It is the only rock that's lightweight enough to float. And pumice, by the way, because it's so rough, is often used for beauty treatments. So women will take a pumice stone and rub it against their feet to get the dead skin off. So it is used in several beauty treatments. Now, as we said, there were two types of igneous rocks. We just looked at examples of extrusive igneous rock. And a good way to remember exclusive is that it exited the earth. So exit meant it goes out of the surface. The last type of rock we're going to look at is called intrusive. And that word in it helps you to remember that it is inside the earth. So intrusive igneous rocks cool and harden slowly under the ground. So here in our video footage, we can see the inside of a volcano. And sometimes that sometimes that magma will not have enough pressure to actually reach the surface of the volcano. Or part of it might erupt, but part of it might get stuck inside of the volcano and not come out. So they're going to be made from hardened magma. And because of that, since they're underneath the Earth's surface, it's much warmer there. So they're going to cool much more slowly. It's going to take them much longer to form. And as a result, they have more time to arrange themselves into crystals. And so these intrusive rocks will have bigger, larger crystals. And they tend to be harder as well because they had more time to compact together and harden as one unit. So the most common type of intrusive igneous rock is called granite. And I actually gave you two rock samples of granite. Granite is spelled Granite. And I gave you two different samples because there's a lot of variety in what granite looks like. It's a speckled rock, and most often it usually has some white in it. A little bit of white or a whole lot of white, that's the mineral quartz. If it's got pink in it, that pink is a mineral called feldspar. But as you can see in your samples, not all granite has the pink in it. And then it will have some black, and then it will also have some little tiny sparkly crystals in there that are called mica. So it's a mix of all these different types of minerals that make granite. And as it cools slowly, it does form these crystals. Now, granite you've probably heard of before because it's used to make a lot of different things. But it does actually have to be mined out of the earth, so it's very expensive. This video footage is showing you a granite quarry in Vermont. So it's a place where they're mining out granite. And so Vermont happens to be a state that is made almost entirely, it's got lots of mountains that were formed from granite rock. And so here they are digging down into the earth, and it's very expensive to dig this out and actually get these rocks out. And granite is one of the hardest rocks. The only thing that's harder than it really is diamonds. So if you want to cut a granite, you actually have to use a saw that would be harder than it, which means your saw actually has to have diamond chips in it. So it takes a lot of work for them to mine it out. You have probably heard of granite, and even if you haven't, I bet you have seen it because granite is found in a lot of different places. So we make statues out of granite. We make headstones that are found in a cemetery out of granite as well. And that's because it's a very hard rock. And so it's less likely to weather and erode away and break down like softer rocks. So we use it for things that we want to be permanent. If you have granite countertops in your kitchen, that is considered a very valuable thing to have in your house because granite is so hard. And when you polish it up, it does look really beautiful. And then you'll find that in some large, fancier places, you'll even have granite on the floor. It's very expensive to have granite flooring, but it looks very elegant and majestic. And so if you walk around in Washington, D.C., most of the floors that are in all of our national buildings are made out of granite. So that's a good overview of all the different types of igneous rocks. Now that we've done it together, see if you can remember the names of those rocks as you hold those rock samples in your hand.